When it comes to female characters who can fight, most of them are awful. They're either unrealistic, overpowered, or lack depth. And as a girl myself, it is honestly exhausting. So thank God for Arcane. Arcane is one of my favorite shows to exist in recent years, and it is one of the rare pieces of modern media that makes typically cringy girl bosses actually compelling. My favorite example of this is this scene. Two strong, muscular women face off, only for a third one to swoop in and save the day, and it all ends with a hint of romance. In most shows, this would easily feel forced, but in Arcane, it's emotional and epic because it's actually written well. Vi, Jinx, and Caitlyn are finally girl bosses that are believable, complex, and have agency. And on top of that, they are diverse. Arcane does such a great job at showing different types of female strength, even just within the warrior archetype. So I want to break down why Arcane excels in writing not just strong female characters, but powerful female fighters that actually matter. To understand just how good Arcane storytelling is, I'm going to use Vi as an anchor for much of the video, and then we'll see how well these elements also apply to Jinx and Caitlyn. Vi is a hot-headed, impatient, but protective older sister who grew up in the slums of Piltover, later known as Zaun. She is arguably the most aggressive of the female characters. One of the most crucial elements that makes Vi so well written is her complex motivations. In other words, what is she fighting for? As a preteen, Vi, along with her younger sister Powder, witnessed the death of their parents in a societal uprising. Her parents are killed by enforcers, officers that protect Topside, or the wealthy part of the city. Enforcers supposedly protect the city, but killed her parents, simply to avoid sharing wealth. Vi learns to distrust authority, but that she can rely on herself. Vi fights to protect. As a result of her parents' death, Vi takes on a maternal role for her adoptive siblings and, most importantly, her biological sister. Powder needs Vi's extra protection because she's younger, smaller, and less experienced. Vi also doesn't want Powder to believe she's as worthless as the city views them as. This is actually very similar to Katniss's role with Prim in the Hunger Games. Vi's need to protect is so strong that even when she can't fight, she'd rather turn herself in to save those she loves. And she'd risk the ultimate danger to avoid losing more family. So when her adoptive father and siblings die, and Vi is captured before she can rescue Powder from evil, her protection complex is amplified. Another familial loss is incredibly traumatizing. Her failure to protect those she loves, again, means protecting her sister, her last family member, is critical. But that's hard to do from prison, and her guilt drives her need for freedom for 5 years. An important distinction is that Vi doesn't necessarily seek vengeance, though I also don't think she'd mind if the city suffered for their crimes. Vi has very clear and convincing motivations, which helps make her actions believable. Contrast her to somebody like Daenerys, at least in Season 8. Don't get me wrong, her mad choice could have made sense, but it doesn't because they don't justify why she chooses it. Vi's motivations make us understand the reasoning behind her violence and make us empathetic towards it. But it's one thing to have something to fight for, it's another to justify why she can fight. Vi's fighting skills are logically born from her unstable upbringing, social class, and personality. Vi is raised by Vander, her adoptive father, and a man who once donned iron fists. It isn't unreasonable that Vi learns boxing skills from him, but since Vander is opposed to violence these days, much of Vi's skills likely develop from survival and real-world experience. Vi grows up in the Undercity, which is unsafe, poor, and cutthroat. Since Vi and the gang steal, she constantly practices self-preservation to protect their loot and her team, which is evidenced by the ever-present blood on her knuckles and the number of times they've been chased. Vi also spends hours practicing on an arcade boxing game. Sure, it's not a real match, but she can learn combinations and develop her strength, which provides a foundation towards mastery. While the other older kids can fight too, Vi is the most skilled. When they're caught by enforcers, her attack does the most damage, and she also teaches them techniques. Sometimes if a girl is overpowered, especially among boys, it can feel forced, but it doesn't with Vi because her excellence is believable. Vi has natural talent, but she's also the most fighter-focused personality of the group. She's headstrong and aggressive. When the rest of the gang is nervous, Vi is confident. Her resiliency drives her to outperform failure rather than sulk in it, unlike Milo, who constantly complains. And her fiery personality leads her to learn quicker on top of her natural gifts. Clagger has natural strength too, but he's a gentler soul and not as intense about perfecting his gifts like Vi. But it's not as if these guys are made lesser than Vi to raise her up. They also possess strengths that Vi doesn't have, like picking locks and patience. Vi is then imprisoned in her mid to late teens, and she has nothing to do but to train for 5 years, and with hardened criminals and prison wardens no less. Half a decade of this experience is surely going to advance her skills significantly, which we see once she gets out. I love that Vi has such a rich backstory because it provides credibility for her skills. One of my least favorite types of female fighters is when they've never fought in their life and then suddenly beat everyone. Triss from Divergent essentially leads a war, even though she's only been in boot camp for like 4 weeks. Even somebody like Elizabeth Swann, who this might be a little controversial, but she grows up in upper-class society, and yes, she does have adventurous inclinations and yearns to be a pirate, but she learns to sword fight in a year and can easily fight off 10 men. Movies definitely don't need to be 100% realistic. Vi herself fights off 10 men as a teenager, and this isn't to say that if a girl has fighting skills, they have to be completely thoroughly justified. The point here is that Vi has a believable backstory, which makes her character feel whole and complete. Whereas these moments don't make as much sense for the character and feel a little bit more forced. This point applies to all fighter characters, by the way, not just girls. Some of the best male fighters are the ones we see grow into their skills. But writing girl who can fight, I think, is the easy part. Many movies and shows neglect to consider this next layer, which is how does she fight? A fighting style is so important to build her unique complexity because it's an extension of her strengths and weaknesses. And it's also important, in my humble opinion, that she is epic to watch on screen. I want to watch a good female fight scene, gosh darn it. Vi's fighting style is the aggressive boxer. She excels in hand-to-hand combat. While she fights rough, she fights with honor, wanting to win fair and on her own merits. Her weapon of choice is her fists. This is likely influenced by Vander, who she idolizes, but there's a deeper complexity here too. Vi isn't born with the luxury of owning fancy weapons. All she has is herself, which is important to contrast to someone like Caitlyn, a warrior born into wealth, whose long-range gun means she doesn't have to fight as dirty. Vi's skill progression also matches her weapon upgrades. First, bare hands to fight street thugs, then Vander's metal fists in a fight where she loses him, graduating to full gloves infused with magic, or hex tech, when she wins against overpowered monsters. Her general fighting style reflects her natural strengths. Vi is action-oriented, so she strikes first and fast. She's confident, so she never backs down when the odds are against her. In fact, she invites it. And she's physically strong. Her punches are so forceful that she tears down entire structures that others can't. And oh my god, do I love this moment. This whole sequence is just phenomenal to me, but the most important thing about Vi's fighting style is that she isn't invincible. The way she fights also mirrors her weaknesses. Vi is impatient. She'll throw the first punch, but without thinking of the consequences. Starting a fight with Sevika alerts Silco that she's out of prison, and he goes after her. Vi also avoids help. She'd rather fight alone than not at all, which makes some battles a lot less likely to win. Her guard is also non-existent, which makes her vulnerable to fatal blows. We often hear that Vi blocks with her face, which is actually quite ironic. Vi is so concerned with the protection of others that she forgets to protect herself. These weaknesses are so crucial to her character because Vi's wins do not come easy. In fact, in all of her fights, she wins just as much as she fails. She fights off 10 men, but she's no match for a steroid monster. Throughout this entire season, she takes several hard punches, loses teeth, sheds blood, screams in pain and frustration, cries in agony, and she gets scared. I love that they show so much ugliness because her flaws and her vulnerability make her feel human, which I don't know about you, but that is exactly the type of character I want to see on screen. Because to me, it isn't empowering when a female fighter never fails. It's empowering when she fails and gets back up. Vi's wins are only satisfying because they feel earned. There's been a trend in recent years with overpowered female characters, but if the only way a woman can be a successful warrior is if she's perfect, this is no better than the message it's trying to combat, which is that we always need to look perfect. We went from girls don't need to look like perfect Barbie dolls, instead they should be perfect action figures. Not only is perfect less emotionally compelling, it's boring. And I feel like there might be a misconception that only boys like fight scenes, but I have probably watched Vi's fight scenes 50 times each because they are so incredible. And it's mostly because of this phenomenal animation. There is such a weighted physicality to her that is so satisfying to watch, especially when she puts on these cool ass gloves. I'm obsessed with these goddamn gloves. I just love the impact they make with all of her punches and the release of this gas at the end, all the gears that turn as they power up. Everything about that is just so fun to watch. I also love how vocal Vi is. And Haley Steinfeld voices her, and she does a phenomenal job. Honestly, every single voice actor in this show does a phenomenal job. These scenes are so revolutionary for me because it is so rare to have a female fight scene be this epic. When I think about Rey from Star Wars, who's another female fighter, does she have a cool fighting style? Maybe she does, but I don't think it's that memorable. Going back to Vi's character, with her strong foundation, her backstory, her skills, her strengths and weaknesses, the next crucial question to ask is, why does she fight? This is different than why can she fight, which is her ability to be violent. It's also different than what she's fighting for. There are a lot of ways you can fight for something, but Vi is specifically violent, and this comes from her belief system. Vi grows up in a city where the ability to fend off threats is essential for her well-being. Plus, she's lost so many loved ones because they couldn't fight enough. To her, talking does nothing, action drives change. Vi believes that fighting is the only way to win. This is why she fights Sevika for her sister's whereabouts rather than ask, tears down Silco's drug district rather than listen, and allies with Jace to destroy the manufacturing plant rather than try a peaceful negotiation. Vi is a very interesting balance because her motivations are quite maternal or typically feminine, but her actions are quite aggressive or typically masculine. These elements work very well though, because that's just who Vi is. She isn't forced into a particular box. As well, Vi's beliefs understandably inform her actions, which directly impact the story, whether it's for better or worse. In other words, Vi has agency. She's not just your token action girl. The most obvious example of how Vi affects the plot is when she lashes out at her sister for causing the death of their found family. Vi told Powder to stay home to protect her, but Powder secretly goes to help anyway and unintentionally blows up the operation and everyone in it. Vi striking Powder, then leaving her, initiates Powder's descent into madness, which drives much of the plot. You could argue what is the actual cause for Powder's madness, but nonetheless, it's this moment that is the turning point. While Vi has a strong belief system, it's also flawed. What she must learn is reflected in who she fights and who she fights with. As a teen, Vander is Vi's parental figure and mentor. Vi looks up to him but clashes with him because he is opposed to fighting, even though he led a rebellion. Vander is an unofficial ruler of the Undercity, and he protects his people by avoiding violence. Vander has learned how much is lost in war the hard way. He tries to teach Vi the same responsibility and the cost of fighting, but Vi is too headstrong. Vi's bandaged hands are a mark of determination, but also destruction. She risks her life for Vander, but hits her sister. Sometimes she doesn't know when to stop. While Vander is proud Vi can fend for herself, he's pained to see her put on the gloves that he threw away for her. When he dies, he isn't there to keep her in check. And we later see that Vi isn't going down the path he intended. She justifies killing a child in the name of change. She has to learn that fighting isn't always the answer. Vi starts to learn the importance of defense, at least for herself, through her rival, Sevika. Sevika was once loyal to Vander until she switched to Silco, the man who wants to rule the Undercity for his own, and took Powder in. Vi loses her first fight against Sevika because she was caught off guard. In her second fight, she finally blocks an attack, which remember is one of her biggest weaknesses, and she's rewarded with an easy defeat. Rescuing her sister is Vi's main goal because she's driven by the guilt of abandoning her. But she isn't prepared for how much her sister has changed. Getting Powder back very quickly turns into destroying Silco, who she believes has infected Powder and turned her into Jinx. And this becomes one of the main questions of the show, which is how far does family go if your family becomes a monster? Is her sister even still alive? This is actually quite similar to Cersei in Game of Thrones, who is the mother of a monster, but she still does everything in her power to protect him. Vi's guilt towards Powder is somewhat misplaced though, because even though she did strike her, she ran away to compose herself and was captured before she could go back. Vi never intentionally abandoned Powder like she thinks, which she'll eventually have to reconcile with. Vi's decision to save Powder is complicated by Caitlyn, an enforcer, and Vi's potential lover. Vi believes that all Piltover enforcers are greedy, cold-hearted, and arrogant. And of course she'd think that because they killed her parents. This belief isn't necessarily true, especially when it's Caitlyn that releases her from prison, saves her life, and agrees the city needs to change. Caitlyn is the antidote to Vi's rage and fills the void of Vander's wisdom, especially when they both tell her she has a good heart. Vi falling for Caitlyn makes her question her beliefs, until her stubbornness gets in the way again. Caitlyn should teach Vi about restraint and open-mindedness, which I guess we'll have to see in the next season. That also hinges on the fact that they'll end up together. I'm really disappointed if they're not together. Vi's independent savior complex is also contrasted by her allies, Jace and Ekko. They both understand that societal change requires a team effort. Vi doesn't change much by the end of the season, but she's on the path to change. Some might say that makes her character weak, but I think this is the point of her character. She's been stuck in a static headspace for 5 years and has to reconcile with the change around her. Because Vi has such complex relationships, she isn't just reduced to a female character or a fighter character. She's a well-rounded, integrated character. Perhaps the one generic thing about Vi is that she is the more stereotypical female fighter that we often see, a more masculine, leadership-oriented, rough with the boys type girl. While she is an excellent example of how to write this character well, this isn't the only way you can write a female fighter. Jinx and Caitlyn are very different from Vi, but just as complex and believable. I'm not going to go through them as in depth, but I do want to touch on them to show how well Arcane does diverse girl bosses. Powder, who now goes by Jinx, is a mentally unstable, traumatized, and trigger-happy teenager. The adopted siblings she inadvertently kills torment her as voices in her head. Small in stature and accident-prone, she wants to prove that she is more than a burden. Jinx also wants to be loved for the way she is, and fears abandonment. Jinx is naturally inventive and learns to make crude bombs and guns from trinkets she picks up on the street. Once taken in by Silco, he provides her with resources to strengthen her inventions. Since Jinx is small, she relies on large weapons and surprise attacks. But because she is so maniacal, her weapons are unpredictable and excessively explosive, often doing more damage than necessary. Jinx also has one of my favorite fight scenes, which is her fight scene with Ekko. It's so good and the music is so good. I could talk about this scene forever too. Anyways, the next question is, why does she fight? Well, for Jinx, it's all she knows. She looked up to Vi, who fought, and she was taken in by Silco, who she fights for. Her relationship to violence is actually quite complicated because she is so mentally traumatized. She goes from enjoying killing to not having an emotion towards it. Does her fighting impact the story? Absolutely. Jinx's actions drive every single act of the story. Jinx also has complex relationships in this story too. Then there's Caitlyn, who is the anti-Vi. She is the sheltered sharpshooter who is determined to see more of the world away from the watchful eyes of her parents. Initially, she just doesn't want to be kept inside and wants to solve suspected corruption, until she realizes just how much the world is hurting. Caitlyn fights for peace. She can fight because her wealthy parents invested in her interests and encouraged a natural gift as a child. She also has a unique fighting style. Caitlyn is calm, detail-oriented, and focused, which is why she is an excellent shot from a distance. But given that she grew up in luxury, she's less streetwise. And while her damage is extremely targeted, it's smaller in contrast to Vi's or Jinx's explosive destruction. Why does she fight is also interesting because she's actually opposed to violence most of the time. She only uses it when necessary. Caitlyn's fighting also impacts the story. She saves Vi multiple times and intentionally doesn't kill Sevika, who then tells Silco that Vi is back from the dead. Caitlyn also has complex relationships. There are also a lot of other strong female characters in Arcane, even if we don't necessarily see them fighting. Mel is the warrior who wins on the political battlefield, and she's a strong woman who also has sex appeal. There's also Grayson, Sevika, and Mel's mom, who are women in power positions. These are all really great characters too. To me, female characters who are emotional and human are what I find the most empowering because I can actually connect to them. Female fighters can be physically strong or not. She can be sexy or not, poor or wealthy, young or old. For me, I just want a well-written character that makes sense given her circumstances. And I should also note that what Arcane does for women, they also do for their male characters. There are men that are heroes and have to be saved. Some aren't physically strong and some are. Some are strong but don't know how to fight, and it's not to make the girl look better, but because they simply just grew up in academia. Some men are caretakers and some are scientists. And again, you've got sexy men, young, old. There's a whole bunch of diversity there too. What I love about Arcane is that it doesn't try to make a certain point. It just tells a good story. I also think it says so much that I am someone who has never played League of Legends, which, by the way, I don't think I've even said this in this video, but this show is based off the video game League of Legends. But I have never played this game, and I feel so strongly about it. There is so much more to love about this show too. There's so many other characters that are really well done. The animation is phenomenal. Like I said, I could talk about this for 77 years. The music is so good. The character design is excellent. Let me know if there's anything I didn't mention about these girls that you love, because this show is so detailed. I couldn't include everything. I cannot wait for season 2. I will probably be talking about it depending on if you liked this video. I hope you have a good day and a lovely night, and thank you so much for watching.